Welcome to My Forever Home, the podcast. I'm Frances Cosway and I've helped hundreds of people create forever homes. I can't wait to share the journey with you. So let's start. Hi everyone and welcome to episode 18 of the Kitchen Design Essential season of the Your Forever Home podcast. It's great to be here today, back after obviously the fabulous interviews with Rob Sinclair about appliances, and last week I was talking about handles and hardware. Now today is all about what is regarded as the fun stuff. I mean, I find so many parts of designing a kitchen fun. I really love the intricate detail of how it's all going to work and function, as in the, the internal elevation stage and how we can really make it look amazing in terms of its layout. But I suppose today is the one that a lot of people have been asking about, and that is how to choose your kitchen colours. And colours is, can mean so many different things. It's not just about, your internal wall colour. We're talking about the colours of your bench tops and your cabinetry and your splashback, and how does that integrate with the floor and how does it talk to the rest of the home? And so I'm really excited about today's episode because I'm going to walk you through lots of different things to think about. Some of the top, I suppose, combinations of colour types and how you can inject colour into your kitchen without being scared and a bit worried, and then having something quite clinical. So I'm going to walk through lots of different options today. Now, one thing I'll start with is that your kitchen doesn't necessarily need to match per se the rest of your home. So what I mean by that is, just because you've got a particular tile in the bathroom, you don't need to bring that across into the kitchen. In fact, please don't have the same tile that you've been using in your bathrooms and have it on in your kitchen as a splashback. That is really a highlight of we've got a few tiles left over, so let's just put those in the splashback. So please avoid that. Make your kitchen a unique space. It can be, different material type, and I suppose that's what I'm referring to, that your kitchen doesn't have to be what everything else is in the home. So what I'd like you to consider is, think about each component, but provide an overview of of thoughts and ideas that you can actually then take away into your kitchen. So you can have your kitchen in a colorway that is, different from the rest of the home. What the really important thing to consider, though, is the use of tone. And what I mean by that is the warm color tones, which may have yellow. And I get nervous when I say yellow, because then people feel like it's going to be canary yellow, or there's going to be this awful dated mustard yellow, in a paint color. And look, mustard's awesome, don't get me wrong there, but there's this overpowering yellow tone. What I mean by warm is that we're working more with beiges and brown color tone rather than the greys, which is a cool color base. The really important thing for any home is that color tone is throughout the home. So you cannot really blend the tones of the tones in a home. They need to be following through. So you've got a warm base tone, or you've got a cool base tone, and it's very difficult, and it'll feel jarring. It just won't flow because you're using different color tones. So that's the most important thing. So if you've got a warm home, you need to make sure that materials you're choosing for your kitchen are also warm. Doesn't mean that you can't have color in there, but you need to make sure that continuity and flow is also going through to the rest of your home. Also, when you've got an open plan space, which is becoming more and more prevalent, obviously, in the modern day design of our spaces, is we've got open plans. So the kitchen is often overlooking the dining or the living space. You need to make sure then that whatever the style is of the home and the style that you're representing then in the spaces that are in the space where the kitchen is, are not conflicting. As an example, if you've got a very contemporary home, don't go and put in a country style kitchen. So we often work with clients where they do have a Californian bungalow, they have a Federation style And they want to have a nod to the heritage of the home. So we will incorporate cabinetry profile doors that reflect the heritage of the home without it being overly modern, but without it really being, daggy and dated. So you need to make sure that there's continuity in the style as well. And again, we're not talking about colours and so forth. We're talking about the foundation of what the home is representing, that continuity. So the consistency of tone is really critical. And you need to have that consistency going throughout the whole home as well as in the kitchen. So often when you're trying to work out what tone your home is, and this can be really difficult for people, and it can be really, really challenging. I find it quite difficult to describe. You naturally gravitate to one or the other. So you will naturally gravitate to cool color tones, or you'll naturally gravitate to warm. And what I really want you to try and do is avoid and think about what is the fashion at the moment. Grey has been in for quite a while, grey color tones, and grey is already making its way out. But I really want you to think about what you gravitate to. And often it is colors that you wear. So me personally, I am a really warm person. I just gravitate to the colors of nature. I gravitate to a warm color tones and color palette. And other people, they're just grey. It's just like cool color tones is really what they gravitate to. So maybe if you're getting a bit stuck, think about what you wear. But if it's not consistent, that tone's not throughout the whole home, it won't feel right. All right, so choosing material and their colors. The very first thing, and I've said this in other episodes, is you need to start with your floor. Everything gets built up from the floor. So if you're thinking about the floor for your kitchen, and gone are the days where we've got, the beading around and you've got a different flooring type in your kitchen, it's generally going to flow throughout. So you've got the dining, the living, and the kitchen is all going to be the same, and often it'll flow into the laundry as well. So you need to think, if you've got a timber floor, are you going to then have cabinetry that may be timber as well that is going to blend in, or are you going to create a contrast? Now, I personally prefer to create design schemes that have a contrast. It's really then creating a space of, these are the separation. You've got a separation point. But some kitchens are designed per se to be blended into the floor, and that is quite also a Scandinavian, a very simple look. Think about ply. So you need to think about that. How's the floor, if it's a timber floor, going to work with the kitchen if you are incorporating timber into that kitchen? So the easiest way for me to describe choosing and selecting colours and so forth and the materials for your kitchen is, we've already talked about material types. So here I'm just going to be talking about colours and the contrast and so forth. So you need to choose your leading piece, and then you select your other materials around this piece. And I know I've talked about this in other decorating episodes as well, not linked to kitchens. So for example, you may have a splashback tile or a colour that you want to have in your splashback that you think, that is, I have to have that. And so everything else then is designed around it. And we have it with clients as well. They're like, oh, I have just always had my heart set on having chocolate coloured timber cabinetry. Well, then that's it. We will then design, making sure that we're designing around the chocolate coloured timber cabinetry. It may be a splashback tile. You've always wanted a green, or you've always wanted this bright orange, or whatever it is. That is then the key piece that we need to then design everything else around. And I think that that's the simplest way to start. Start with the leading piece, and then you can design everything else around that. Choose everything else around it. It may be that you want apple green cabinetry. Everything else gets designed around it. It may be that you have a natural stone that has got a pink element to it, or it's got a really lots of different variation in the color of that natural stone. That is the leading piece, and we will then design everything else around it. If you can imagine a very busy natural piece of stone, which is beautiful in its own right, it's going to be, it's really going to affect the splashback that you have with that. And this is where tone comes into play, but also that things don't get too busy. So don't start with the paint color. So many people contact us and, oh, I've chosen my paint color. And it's like, you know what? Let's just forget about the paint color. There's over 10,000 different paint colors that you can choose from. I'm not worried about the paint color. We will find a paint color to match and coordinate back to everything else that we're going to decide. We may be really limited in a splashback tile that you love. So forget about the paint color right now. It's right at the end after everything else has been decided that we work out what the paint color is going to be. So choose something that you love is what I always say. And it's really something that you need to keep in mind, that all the things that you're choosing are things that you love. So whether it's a material type, it's a tile that you love, it's a color or a shape, make sure that you're choosing something that you really love. And this is where it comes into that comment that I hear all the time. Oh, I want to make sure that I'm choosing things that are not going to date. Well, you know what? Everything is going to date eventually. Whether it's going to date in 5 years, it may last 10, it may last 15, it may even last 20, because you're choosing very neutral colors. But ultimately, things will date, whether it's the shape, the thickness of the bench top, the profile of the doors, the handles that you've chosen. Everything will eventually look tired compared to what is going on at that current time. So try and forget about that and just focus on what you love. And so if you're focusing on shapes that you love, designs that you love, patterns that you love, or colors that you love, ultimately it means that you will not tire of that as quickly compared to something that you think, well, this won't date. And it also means, and I go back to the fact that this is your forever home, you're injecting something that's a bit of you. And then it means that it's got this personality to it, to this kitchen that is the centerpiece of your home, and that it's not all about, I need to choose something that's bland and boring and blah because I don't want it to date. Be a bit braver. And that is often where people will engage a interior designer, because they're a bit nervous about incorporating something that they really love and making sure that it is all going to work with everything else. And we can allow you to be a little bit more brave, because we're not going to let you make decisions that are going to look terrible. We will allow you to come a little bit out of your comfort zone to say, yes, that tile that you love is going to work, because we're going to choose things to coordinate back with it that we know are going to work. Now, I'll just give you an example, and some of you have may already heard this, but when I was building my forever home nearly 6 years ago now, 6 years in December, I chose a tile that I'd been in love with forever and a day, a Patricia Erklower tile that was just, for me, I just loved it for so many different things. It was, it had lots of different patterns in there that I loved. There was a lot of variety in it, and it was pretty loud. I mean, you could get it in a colorway that was lots of multicolors, but I decided to choose a pared back because I thought those colors I could actually tire of. So I will stick with the grays, and I don't normally gravitate to grays, as you heard me say earlier. It was charcoals and light grays and like an off-white. Love the tile. And I always knew when I built my forever home, boy, I was going to have that splashback as my, that tile as my splashback. And so the rest of the kitchen was designed around the splashback. That was the leading piece. And so I needed to make sure that my bench tops coordinated back with that tile, which means I've got charcoal bench tops, also not my natural gravitation. But I knew they were going to still work with everything else that I loved. And I also knew that I wanted it quite light. So I still have the white cabinets, but I'm breaking it up with a really solid, charcoal bench top. And then also I've got this tile, which is really loud and busy. I couldn't then go and incorporate all these other things, but because it was just going to be really over the top, and that I thought I was going to tire of. So because I love that tile, and the tile is, oh, we hate this tile, it's too busy, and are you crazy or whatever? Yeah, that's great. It's not your house. And, and I say to people, you're either going to love it or you're not. And I don't really care, because it's my house and I love it. My partner wasn't that super keen on it, but that's okay. He said, oh, you're the designer, so you can have, I was pretty lucky. He let me do what I wanted to do. So my point is, if you love it, and I knew I'd always gravitated to that tile, I wasn't fussed. I knew that. And 6 years later, I still love that tile. I'd loved it for 10 years before then anyway, so I knew it wasn't going to be an issue. So don't worry about that too much. If you love it, a color, shape, whatever it is, you won't tire of it. I can completely guarantee you that. So start with the leading piece. Then I suppose you need to decide, and the leading piece may actually determine this or not, is whether you have a preference for dark or light cabinetry. That's quite a big decision. A lot of people will say to us, we want a really light and bright kitchen. We don't want it dark and dingy. Well, we're obviously not going to then come back with dark cabinetry. Others will say to us, we really like the dark timber. That's fine. We know that you're going to have then dark cabinetry. So an all white kitchen, which sometimes people feel is safe, can also feel really clinical unless you're going to brighten it up with something else. And maybe it's going to be how you accessorize. Maybe it's you're going to have accent colors in there. Maybe it's you're going to have splashback that's going to break it up. And you could still have a very neutral splashback. So we call this monochromatic, but maybe you're going to add then gloss, or you're going to have a shape, or you're going to have a pattern that is going to break away from this completely somber, or not somber, I should say, but clinical kitchen. So clinical would be all white cabinetry and a glass splashback. Oh my goodness me, please don't do that. It's just going to be so boring, so clinical, so it's just got nothing to it. There's no personality. So it may be safe, and this is where you need some guidance to steer you into something that is still going to look quite light and bright, but is going to have some interest to it. And there's nothing wrong with having it all one color, but you need to have something that's going to layer and texture, layer what's going on with the monochromatic scheme. It could be that you could choose an off-white or a warm grey, something that is just going to allow it not to be as strikingly clinical as a really bright white kitchen. We have our go-to, I call it a warm grey because it's not quite a grey and it's not a beige, so it's a greyish. It is our absolute go-to because it just goes with everything. So for people that are really cool, they love it. For people that are really warm, they love it. It is just a beautiful cabinetry color that is just, it's not, and it's also not too white, so it doesn't feel too clinical, and it works with warm and cool interiors. It's an absolute gem. But then, as I was saying, you can add your texture and your shape and so forth in your splashback, but you can also then use a bench top that's got movement in it. So again, there's something going on that is creating movement and something else in something that is very light and spacious and light and airy. I'm a big fan of creating contrast, and whether that's with your bench top or your cabinetry, or maybe it's with your splashback. You might have a light cabinetry and a dark bench top. You may have dark bench tops and light cabinetry. Did I say that the right way around? Yes, I'm going to get myself into a tongue twist. Or it may be that you want something that is really sleek and sophisticated, and in that instance, less is more. In fact, less is more as a key overall, particularly when I'm seeing exterior homes and they've got like 6 different colours going on and this material and that material. It's like, oh my goodness me, what's going on here? Often the best schemes are when less is more. So if you want it really sleek and sophisticated, maybe that you're going to have dark cabinetry, with a bench top and a splashback, a lighter bench top, and then you may have a splashback that's going to be the same as the bench top and some really dark cabinetry. That's really sleek and sophisticated. What I would say, if you're aiming for sleek and sophisticated, is no more than 3 materials, no more than 3 colours. You might have all the cabinetry the same, the bench top is different, and then you may have the splashback of the bench top blend in as the splashback, or it may be that you choose a very simple splashback. It may be that you have dark overhead and then light underneath, and then the same splashback as the bench top. So less is more if you're going for sleek and sophisticated. All right, timber in a kitchen. How do we deal with timber in a kitchen? You could have, so I'm just going to run through a whole lot of different options here. And because this is a podcast, I can't really show you things, but there are ways that you can create lots of different ways that you can incorporate timber in a kitchen. One of the classic things I also get asked is it going to date? Timber is really big at the moment. It was huge in the 70s, as we know, where we had our timber lined ceilings, we had our timber cabinetry everywhere, we had timber floors. It was just an overload of timber. And a lot of people are now going to paint all that timber, which can be a little bit disappointing because there are ways that you can incorporate it. So what I would say is, Timber is making a really big resurgence for a lot of big renaissance, I should say, for probably quite a few reasons. One, it's a sustainable material, and that is something that's really big and front of mind with a lot of people. And there is this real consciousness also around the chemicals that are being emitted into our homes because of the formaldehyde and other bonding agents that are used for laminate products. And there is a big improvement in the chemicals that are being used and the way these materials are being manufactured and recycled. But timber, there's this organic feeling with a natural timber that it's difficult to replace. Now, there are some incredible products out there that are not necessarily natural timber. Natural timber is going to come with a premium price, and a veneer is incredibly it's a premium. Pardon me, it's a premium product. But the other thing to consider is when you're using a veneer or natural product, the natural timber, is it may not be as durable as what you need it to be. Lots of things to consider, and I talked about that in the materials episode of the podcast, so go back to that one if you missed it, and you can listen to me talk about using veneers and so forth and timbers in your kitchen. So what I'm going to talk about here is just a timber look, whether you're using natural timber or whether you're using a timber look. There's always ways that you can incorporate it that it's not an overload, it's more accents, which really gives you that very lovely earthy feel anyway. So it could be that you have a timber cabinetry overhead. That could be a choice because you've got a really a timber floor and you don't want to have a contrast. So it may be, the safest way then is to have the timber cabinetry overhead and you've still got your timber floor. They're not going to clash. They're not going to compete with each other. And then you'd have maybe a plain cabinetry underneath or vice versa. You need to be mindful though, that whatever that timber underneath is, it needs to work with the timber floor. So you need to really get that right, the contrast right, or the tones right for that to work. It may be that you've got an all timber finish, and it could be with a light or dark timber. And then you need to make sure that that bench top is going to coordinate back to this all timber kitchen. You may have a timber bench top and plain cabinetry, or you may have a timber bench top, and timber, as we know, goes with everything. So you may have a timber bench top and then coloured cabinetry. Envisage timber bench top and then, a really soft green cabinetry colour. Beautiful. You may have timber handles as an accent. I know we've been working on a client with that as well. Really, really beautiful. Really gets you back to nature. Feels really organic. So timber goes with everything. But you need to make sure that timber on timber, those tones need to work. It may be that you use timber in the kitchen as an accent. So you may have timber handles, you may have timber floating shelves just on maybe the side of the kitchen. They could be a little corner, and that's where you can actually create then timber accents. You may have a white kitchen or whatever it is, a coloured kitchen, a green kitchen, and then you've got these, timber shelves. That's a really nice way to incorporate timber as well. Avoid grey-based timbers. They're artificial. We don't have a grey timber. Yes, timber can grey off, but the artificial greys that they're producing that are being produced in timber floors and timber cabinetry, it doesn't look real. It will never look real. So they're not the colours of nature, and they are the sorts of timber colours that will date because they're not natural colours. So if you're avoiding that grey-based timber, I think you're going to be in a much better position that's less likely to date. Combine your cool tones with other materials, not the actual timber colour. So what I mean by that is you may really like the greys. So rather than going for a grey coloured timber, so that artificial grey timber, go for a natural timber colour and then incorporate a grey cabinetry colour, or you may have a grey element in your splashback. So there's other ways that you can incorporate that cool element without it being a artificial grey timber colour. And don't forget what I was saying before, less is more. So don't mix different types of timbers all over the place. It's just going to become too busy. Stick with one. Prefer to contrast your timber floor with the timber cabinetry, as I was saying. And if in doubt, then have the timber overhead so that you know that there's not going to be this, they're touching each other. And that's when that'll be an obvious, oh, that really doesn't look great. And maximum 4 different materials overall. So this is now moving on from the timber. So you've got your benchtop material, you've got your cabinetry material and your splashback, and you may then have an accent material. So as I was saying before, you might have the accent material could be floating shelves, or it could be in the handles, or you would have a second cabinetry color. So you might have, so as an example, your benchtop may be, charcoal. Then you may have your cabinetry white, and then you may have a different color splashback. That's enough, but then you may have a little accent with floating shelves in timber, or you'd have a secondary cabinetry color. So you may have timber overhead, a light color underneath, your splashback color, and then your benchtop color may be charcoal. There's your 4 colors. That's all you need. You otherwise, if you start incorporating more than that, it just gets all too busy. So how do we bring in color to a kitchen? And there's lots and lots of different ways to make, an ordinary looking kitchen look really quite special and add a lot of pizzazz, which is using color. So the really obvious and easy one is in your splashback. So it may be a color, it may be a shape, it may be texture. It could be all 3 that are going to add something, but particularly a color into your kitchen. Now, what I will say is, please use a color that you have always loved. Don't go for what's in fashion at the moment. Don't go for some crazy thing that you've seen in a magazine or on a TV show. If you haven't loved it for a long time, it is likely that you'll get sick of it. So this is always I suppose it's my sanity check with my clients. I can just put something in front of them and I can see instantly whether that is an oh my goodness me, I'm totally in love with that, or oh, I like it, I really like it. Not good enough. You have to be in love with it. So if you stick with a color that you've always gravitated to, for me, it's teal and green. My whole life, I've been a green and teal person. I know I'm not going to get sick of it. If it's just a color of the day, just stay away from it. It's just not going to last the distance. The good thing though with a splashback is it's relatively easy to replace. So, you can either put something over the top of it or you can chip away at it. It's going to be a lot easier. I'm not saying it's super easy, but it's going to be a lot easier than choosing to rip out all your cabinetry or take away your bench top. So it is probably the safest place to add color, knowing that down the line, if you really get sick of it, you can change it. A cabinetry. Now that is also a really great way to bring in a color that you love, a color again that you've always loved. So it may be, a beautiful sage green. Greens are really getting airplay at the moment, and I'm so happy about it because these organic greens, I've got a client, she says, oh, I want my kitchen to be a eucalyptus green. I want it to be the green of this leaf that I picked up one day that I just absolutely love. Music to my ears. So these soft colors in kitchens, rather than a bright red or a bright orange that we saw in the 90s, using softer colors, it's not as jarring, and you don't get sick of it as easily either. So muted tones, really soft blues, and soft pinks even. But I know apricot's making a comeback, and it does make me think about the 80s. But again, choose a color that you love, and if you pare it down a little bit, you're less likely to get sick of it as well. The bench top is also a way that you can incorporate color. I know that when I'm doing my masterclass on kitchens, there's an amazing bench top that I show, which is, it's concrete and it is pink. And this lady said, I've always loved it. That's what I've always wanted. Well, good on her. And, if it's a color that you've always loved, you're never going to get sick of it. But she was brave enough to just go with what she loved. So natural stone, there might be an onyx or, a green emerald, or I keep talking about green, don't I? I'm a little bit biased on my green, but there may be some amazing color, lapis, bright blue or something that you just really, really gravitate to. And that's a way to inject color into your kitchen with your bench top. Tonal changes. So this is another way that you can avoid having all white, that you might have a slight tonal change, and that would be in that texture can make a difference. It may be that you're adding a gloss, but that just these tonal changes can also add a little bit of point of difference. Rather than it being all white, you may have then a couple of tones darker in the cabinetry, or it might be a couple of tones darker in your splashback or your bench top. You could have coloured appliances, and this is sort of getting into the decorating thing that I'll touch on later, but coloured appliances, the loud and garish Dolce & Gabbana fridge, which is just, my goodness me, just full of pattern and texture, or not texture, but, you know, colour and design in your fridge. That's not for everyone. But it could be, you know, you may have a coloured fridge. Smeg are doing coloured fridges, and there's other brands that are now doing coloured fridges as well. And it's coming out into some of the appliances. White appliances are coming back. So if you are having, you know, a white kitchen, all your appliances can blend in. So white fridges are coming back, or white ovens as well. And I know I touched on that with Rob in the appliances episode a couple of weeks ago. But you could also inject colour into your kitchen by just having the counter appliances. So, for example, your coffee machine, your toaster, your kettle, your mix master, your blender, all of that could be in colour. So, for example, KitchenAid do a myriad different colours for their KitchenAid mixes. And so you may then coordinate those and have colour injected into your kitchen by having the desktop, listen to me, your kitchen top appliances in a color. But I will refer back to decorating in a little bit later, because that is also a way that you can inject color and, you know, really enhance the look of your kitchen. So consider your appliance colors as well when you are choosing your design scheme. So do you know that your appliances are going to be stainless steel, or are they going to be black, which is now available, or are you going to have them white, or are they going to be integrated where they are going to be the color of the cabinetry anyway? You want them to recede really and blend in, or you're okay to have them contrast. So for example, if they are stainless steel and you've got a white kitchen, that's a big contrast. I think we've got used to that look, the stainless steel, you know, being in our dishwashers and our fridges, but it may be that you really want them to, all your appliances to recede. And so if you've got really dark cabinetry for your kitchen, you may want to choose black appliances so that they don't stand out as much. So have that as a consideration as well when you are choosing your colors. Make sure that when you are dealing with your fridge area, particularly if you've got an integrated fridge, which is going to be the same color as the cabinetry, as well as your oven, they are together, that you've got this your you know, floor to ceiling, or your high cabinetry is all blocked together. And that is chosen then in one particular material type. And it may be that you, for example, let's just say you've got a dark cabinetry, so that fridge and oven and built-in oven area is all dark, and then across the top you may run that across the top as well, or you may have a contrast there. So you need to think about, how is that block going to be dealt with? And it may look great in the elevations, that yes, I can see it all, but when you start then choosing the materials, that's all got to coordinate in, and how does it run then at the bottom? So you need to think about that too if you are having a tower, a wall oven, and you're having your wall tower, and then you've got your integrated fridge area as well. How it's going to work with the overhead cupboards, and then how it's going to work with the under cabinet cupboards when it's all got to flow basically. So what are some popular combination choices? I've got quite a few here to run through, but I just wanted to talk through what are some of the combinations that we know work. Again, making sure that you're working back with your tones. So timber and plain coloured cabinetry, really popular at the moment. And because timber goes with everything, it means that you're open to your colours, you're open to your tonal as well, whether they're warm or cool. You can choose your timber if it's a natural shade of timber, so your walnuts, your oaks and your plies and your birch and so forth. And then you can have that, you know, really coordinated back with any coloured cabinetry. So you could have timber and plain, whether it's white, light, dark, you know, that they generally work well. Timber with a light coloured cabinetry works really particularly beautiful. Then you can have dark timber cabinetry only with a lighter coloured bench top and a splashback. Dark overhead cabinetry and light underneath. So for example, you may have a dark timber overhead and then light underneath, also with a light bench top. You could also have that in reverse, dark cabinetry, light, and then a dark bench top, because that's going to contrast really beautifully with the light cabinetry underneath. You may have dark bench top with light cabinetry above or below, or both. And really this is then going to what I was talking about before about the leading piece. Some people are quite set. They know that they want a dark bench top or they want a light bench top. And if you know then that you're going to be working with a light or dark, then you can start working with, okay, so what are the cabinetry colors that are going to then start working back with that? You may have all light cabinetry, so a light bench top, a light cabinetry, both above and below, and then a colored splashback. And that makes that splashback really pop, and that really is the color injection or the shape or texture injection with the color in that kitchen. You may have light cabinetry with a dark bench top and a colored splashback. Also works really, really beautifully. You may have monochromatic, and monochromatic is where you're basically using different tones from the same color family. So for example, if you've got monochromatic, you may be using grays and elements of black and white, because they're all the same tone or very light colors of gray. So you might have grays, you may have dark gray, light gray, and white. You may, using the charcoal, and then a light gray cabinetry and elements of white. Or so there's lots of different ways that you can create a monochromatic kitchen. All I'll say with that is, like I said earlier, make sure that the splashback is not glass, preferably. You know my views on glass if you've been listening to me for a while, but you could have a tile that is in one of those same sorts of colors, but because it's a tile, it's got a different texture, it can still blend into the cabinetry, and there's your monochromatic. All right, so that is choosing all the colors and what are the color combinations and what do you have to be mindful of with regards to choosing these different materials for the kitchen. The next thing I wanted to just talk about was decorating. How do you decorate your kitchen? It sounds crazy, doesn't it? Can I really decorate my kitchen? Well, yeah, you can. And you'll know that when, you're seeing houses that are for sale, their kitchens are looking really lovely. It may be that you have a really beautiful Le Creuset pot on your stove that sits there permanently. That can look really beautiful, especially if it's a color. My Le Creuset is a light blue. I loved it at the time. You can't get it anymore, as happens with a lot of their colors. They're limited release. And just having that there can look really beautiful. It looks like it just has that homey feel. It may be the other thing that I used to use was my Alessi kettle. That was my little feature piece in my kitchen. So that you could have these little special things. I sort of bring him out and then I pack him away again because I don't really use a what am I saying? A stovetop kettle anymore. Pardon me. So decorating and bringing things into your kitchen can make something that's quite bland, something feel lived in and special. The key is, again, don't go and overdo it. Don't go and clutter your bench tops with so much stuff and, I've got this and I've got that. And I suppose that's the same through the house as well. But there's lots of ways that you can just integrate things that you also use on a daily basis that then form part of the decorating element. But don't do too much. A few things is all you need. It just makes it feel lived in and used and personable and homey. So what are some of the best things to display that you can use as well? So timber boards, so chopping boards, timber chopping boards, they can look really lovely up against the side. You can have them layered and they can look really lovely, particularly if it's a piece of timber that's an organic shape, or it's, a piece of some of the markets you can get super beautiful boards, stunning piece of timber that's been oiled. They look absolutely gorgeous. And it may be that you've got a cheese board or something like that. They can look lovely as well. So you can sort of layer your chopping boards. Salt and pepper shakers. You may have a really beautiful set of salt and pepper shakers, or even a salt dish. We use a salt dish, and then you can have different sized ones if you like. I know for me personally, I've got the really oversized one, and then I have a little one, and it depends on the grind, and then I've got a beautiful little salt dish, and I have that all next to my stove top on a little on a tray effectively. So it looks really nice. And then you can mix that with an oil canister. So it may be that you do have a little tray. I personally use a slice of timber because I'm really into my timber, and then I just layer everything on there, but everything's there to be used, and I can just lift that up and wipe everything around there. So oil canisters, a salt dish, salt and pepper shakers, they can all just be clustered together on a little tray. Or a board, or even a board would work really beautifully. You use it every day, but it just sort of dresses that part of the kitchen too. Oil canisters, so they might be stainless steel, they might be ceramic, that you can transfer your oil in. You might have a very special oil that you use for salads. salads or a special oil that you use for cooking. And they can also be part of this cluster of things that you use. Work in odds. Odds generally work better than using equals. So working in 3, 5s and 7s rather than 2, 4s and 6s. You may have floating shelves, and having floating shelves around feature window, picture windows is really beautiful. It means that not everything is cluttered, that you've got all this built-in cabinetry that is then going to, push this window in. You can just have some floating shelves. And on these floating shelves, what a beautiful opportunity to decorate with trailing plants, devil's ivy, the little pearls, bees. It's just slipped my mind the other one I'm thinking of, but a beautiful trailing plant would look lovely. Cookbooks, you can have them standing up, you can have them down. How awesome that they are just there for you to just take really quickly so that you can refer back to them. They're basically on hand. You may have a jug there, a really beautiful jug. You may have a special cup and saucer or a teapot or a coffee pot or something like that, something that really means something to you or that you love. Again, you can get access to those easily, but they look really beautiful on some shelves. So I really encourage you to have some open shelves that are purely used for decorative purposes, and it breaks up the cabinetry and it just makes it look really, really nice. It just makes it look lived in. Other things that you can have are herb pots. Not only are they super functional, but they look beautiful. You've got greenie in the kitchen and they're really easy to access. So, access your herbs as you're cooking. So you could have them on the sill. You could have them, again, on a board or on a tray, clustered together, make sure that they've got new light. Another way is to inject colour or a bit of design or whatever, are some amazing coloured tea towels or hand towels. There's some beautiful ones available, really crisp linen. They're a really nice way to inject something else into your kitchen. Artwork. Generally speaking, there is a bare wall somewhere that a really beautiful piece of artwork can be utilised. Again, choose something that you love. It may be that you're going to wallpaper a wall that's abutting up to the kitchen. That's another way to inject something else. Large decorative clock, not only useful, but looks really, really beautiful. Works particularly well in a Hamptons style kitchen too, or a more classic style kitchen. Having a really, old style clock can look lovely. And then, of course, there's a centerpiece. If you've got a really big island bench, it's really nice at one end to have, something decorative there. So it could be a bunch of flowers that you may replace on a regular basis. It could be that you get a really beautiful set of artificial flowers in an acrylic, in a vase with acrylic water at the bottom. They look great. The vogue at the moment is obviously the dried flowers. So I personally have a really big Robert Gordon pot that I then fill with whatever's going on in the garden at the time. Sometimes I let that dry out. Sometimes I'll replace it. So it's really good when you've got such a big long bench to have something at one end. It just breaks it up a little bit and it makes it look a bit more lived in. You could have a really big, beautiful pot plant there, something that flowers or something that doesn't. I generally mix it up. You may have a big bowl of fruit, a tiered platter of fruit. You may have a decorative bowl that doesn't have to have anything in there. So a tray with a cluster of a few items can work really well too. You just need to make sure that the proportion's right, that it's the right scale for the length of the bench. And if you've got a dining table that is really close to the kitchen, that's another spot that you can have a decorative element that breaks it up. Now, it doesn't have to be centered. You can always have it at one end or the other. You may have a tray or a decorative dish, a decorative platter, something that, means something to you. But don't feel that everything has to be centered. You can have it on one end or another, rather than it always being in the middle. It's a personal preference, but try it out. Have it at one end and then have it in the middle and see what you prefer. I find particularly on a bench or an island, or a dining table, if it is at one end, you're not having to move that every time the family is sitting down to have dinner. Whoa. That is decorating and choosing colours for your kitchen. I hope that I trust that you've got lots and lots of information from that. And I certainly hope it's giving you some direction on how you can pull your colours together for your kitchen, and also how you can just finish your kitchen off with a few decorating things. And experiment, things that you're using on a regular basis, maybe you'll have those out, but it's always really nice to have your own things in your kitchen because it makes such a big difference to it being lived in and used and without it feeling cluttered at the same time. So we've still got a few episodes left, got 4 episodes left of Kitchen Design Essentials. I'm going to be talking about outdoor kitchens. I'm going to be talking about lighting, and I'm also still going to be talking about I know there's lighting budgeting, which is also a big one. So still plenty to come. And but we are nearing the end, and I can't believe we're going to have 22 episodes. So it's going to be fantastic that, there's just this amazing resource for people that are doing their kitchens. Don't forget, if you're a bit stuck on yours, we've got the Kitchen Design Sanity Check available on the website. Book it online, available all over Australia, all over the world. We can review your kitchen in detail to see that it's going to work, that the flow's not broken up, and that everything's where it needs to be to your kitchen to work in its optimal way. We can also help you with material selections if you get stuck, and we can obviously also help you with your internal elevations. The blog is proving really popular when there's so much confusion around what's the difference between kitchen cabinetry versus kitchen elevation design. So head to the blog section of the website to make sure that you're accessing that article around really what the difference is. It's been sent out to so many different people now that have requested it that may not have been aware it was there. So tap into that. Want to book a chat with me? Always available, direct access to my diary. So I hope to hear from you soon with whatever kitchen dilemma you may be facing or where you need just some help or a sounding board. I will see you here next week. Podcasts are now being released on a Thursday. And don't forget, our lives are now on, so Instagram and Facebook lives are now 12:30 on a Tuesday. DM me or email me any questions you'd like me to cover off. All right then, bye for now. See you later, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of My Forever Home. If you're ready to renovate or build a new home and you need help to create a beautiful and functional forever home, you can book a chat with me directly at whitepebbleinteriors.com.au/chat. Have a great day.